The rain fell in torrents, drenching the narrow back road as Emily's car crept along. Her fingers tightened on the wheel as the wipers struggled against the downpour. She hated these desolate roads, but the GPS swore this was the fastest route home. She had no choice but to trust it. The rain only grew heavier, each drop hammering her windshield like it wanted to shatter the glass. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Signal lost. Emily cursed under her breath. No GPS, no signal, and now, no idea where she was. The isolation pressed in. She slowed the car, peering through the misty darkness, hoping for some landmark. That's when she saw it. A figure standing on the side of the road, completely still. It was a woman, her back to the car, drenched in the downpour. Emily hesitated. Something about the woman's stillness unnerved her. She didn't move, didn't shiver, didn't even seem to care that the rain was soaking her through. Emily's heart raced, but her instincts took over. Maybe the woman needed help. Rolling the window down slightly, she called out, "Hey, are you okay?" The woman didn't respond, not a single twitch. "Do you need a ride?" Emily's voice trembled slightly now. Slowly, the woman began to turn, her movements stiff and unnatural. As the headlights caught her face, Emily's breath hitched. The woman's face, no, her lack of a face, was staring right at her. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just smooth, blank skin. A wave of cold dread washed over Emily. She rolled up the window and floored the gas, speeding past the faceless figure. Her heart pounded in her chest as she glanced in the rearview mirror. The road stretched on endlessly, trees blurring into the storm. Minutes passed, but Emily's pulse refused to slow. What the hell had she just seen? She tried to shake it off. An illusion from the rain, the exhaustion, nothing more. But then she saw her again, up ahead, the same woman, standing on the side of the road. Emily's heart nearly stopped. How? She hadn't turned, hadn't doubled back, and yet, the woman was there, in the exact same spot. This time, Emily didn't slow. She pressed the gas harder, desperate to put distance between her and whatever was out there. She glanced in the rearview mirror again, and her stomach twisted. The woman was now in the middle of the road, facing the car, watching her. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again. But this wasn't the GPS trying to reconnect. It was a message. "It's time to remember." Emily's pulse quickened. Remember? Remember what? Her mind raced, but nothing made sense. She kept driving, faster now, the rain pounding like it was angry with her, desperate to find an escape. But the road stretched on, twisting deeper into the storm. No signs, no houses, just the endless dark, and that same creeping dread. Then her headlights caught something ahead. Emily's hands shook as she gripped the wheel tighter. It was the woman again, standing exactly where she had been the last 2 times. Emily's heart raced faster now, panic bubbling beneath the surface. She slammed the brakes, her car skidding slightly as it came to a halt. The woman just stood there, faceless, unmoving. Emily's mind screamed at her to run, but her body was frozen. And then it hit her. This road, this woman. She wasn't just some random apparition. Emily had been drunk, angry, speeding after an argument with her ex-boyfriend. The night had been just like this, dark, wet, and unforgiving. She hadn't seen the woman until it was too late. The thud had echoed in her mind, a sickening sound of flesh and bone hitting metal. She'd panicked, driven away, left her in the rain, on this forgotten road, and she had never looked back, until now. Emily's hands trembled. She couldn't breathe. She had buried the memory, convinced herself it had never happened. But the woman hadn't forgotten. This wasn't just a haunting. This was justice. She looked at the road ahead, and then glanced in the mirror. The road stretched on behind her, but something was different. The trees weren't as familiar. The path seemed longer. No matter which way she turned, it was as if the road was swallowing her whole, trapping her in an endless loop. The woman slowly raised her arm and pointed. Not at Emily, but toward a narrow path just beyond the trees. It was barely visible, hidden by thick brush and overgrown foliage. Emily's headlights flickered, illuminating the path, the rain creating a shimmering, eerie glow. Her phone buzzed again. "Come back, finish it." Emily's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just about guilt. The road wasn't letting her go. It wanted her to remember, to return to the place where she'd left the woman, the place she had buried more than just a body. She had buried her own humanity. She could feel the curse tightening around her, the road shifting beneath her, as if it were alive, feeding on her fear. The woman's blank face stared at her, the silence between them screaming of unfinished business. Emily's mind raced. Was there any escape? Could she leave this cursed place? Or was she doomed to drive this road forever, haunted by the things she had tried to forget? She looked down at her hands. They were shaking violently now, her knuckles pale against the wheel. She could drive back, take the narrow path, confront her sins, or she could keep running. But deep down, Emily knew the truth. The road wouldn't let her leave, not without paying the price. Her phone buzzed one last time. "Now it's your turn." Emily took a deep breath, her chest tight with dread, and turned the wheel. The car's headlights cut through the rain as she drove slowly down the forgotten path, toward the place where her past waited for her. The faceless woman watched, unmoving as Emily disappeared into the darkness, and the rain continued to fall. As she ventured deeper down the narrow path, memories began to unravel in her mind, bringing forth unsettling truths. It was not just anger that had propelled her that night. It had been a culmination of feelings she had buried deep, a toxic relationship, self-doubt, and the desperate urge to escape her reality. The sound of her own voice, sharp and cutting during the argument, echoed in her ears. "You're never going to change," her ex had yelled. "You think you're invincible? One day it's going to cost you." His words lingered like a haunting refrain. How could she have dismissed him, laughed off the warning? But that night, she hadn't just ignored him. She had intentionally set out to prove him wrong. She recalled every detail, the haze of alcohol clouding her judgment, and the reckless speed that had turned the road into a blur. It wasn't just the woman who had suffered. The accident had shattered more than one life that night. Emily had lost part of herself too, a version of her that had hoped for redemption and understanding. She was painfully aware that the only thing she had managed to escape was her responsibility. But now, on this twisted path, it seemed the road demanded accountability. Emily glanced down at her phone, desperately hoping for a sign, a signal. But instead, it buzzed ominously. "Face the truth." The message made her stomach drop. What truth? What more could there be? Suddenly, a memory emerged unbidden, stark and vivid. She had seen someone else with the woman that night. A child. A girl who couldn't have been older than 10. The realization crashed over her like a tidal wave. The woman had been taking her daughter to a dance class when Emily had taken everything from them. What had been a simple drive turned into a nightmare. A shattered family, forever marked by Emily's careless rage. As her heart raced, she caught sight of the woman again, standing resolutely on the path. Only this time, the woman wasn't alone. Beside her stood the ghostly silhouette of a little girl, her features indistinct but undeniably present. Emily's breath hitched. The child looked directly at her, wide-eyed and sorrowful. The faceless woman raised her arm and gestured toward the girl, then back at Emily as if to say, "This is your fault." A wave of guilt crashed over Emily, and she felt paralyzed. She had expected punishment, but now she faced a reckoning far worse than she could have imagined. With her pulse pounding in her ears, Emily slammed the car into reverse, desperate to escape the truth, the confrontation she knew she couldn't face. But the road itself seemed to conspire against her. No matter how fast she drove, the familiar path had transformed, twisting and turning, leading her back to where it all began. The rain continued to pour, blurring her vision and distorting reality. The world outside morphed into a dark, suffocating tunnel of despair. And then, just as she thought she might find her way back, the headlights flickered once more, illuminating the remnants of a makeshift memorial by the side of the road. flowers that had wilted in the storm, a small teddy bear, soaked